Hello everyone, welcome back to the Hooded Casual. In today's video, I'm going to showcase the state of my build in the Phrecia Event League and give you a general overview, guiding you in constructing something similar if you like. Before diving into it, a brief disclaimer. I've gathered a lot of information about the mechanics involved in this setup, so I want to mention POE Ninja for always providing insight and inspiration about gems and builds. Also, a huge shout out to Liz Ludo's channel, as it's the only source of updated information I found about Soulrend of Reaping for Phrecia League. If you want more content on this, definitely check them out. So, I started this concept by looking at one of my favorite visual skill gems, Soulrend, and removing the only aspect I didn't like about chaos damage, the damage over time effect. Indeed, its alternate version, Soulrend of Reaping, completely removes the DOT damage in favor of pure flat chaos damage. This makes it a perfect candidate for a mine-based setup. Now let's talk about why we use mines for this skill, because I know not everyone enjoys the mine playstyle. First, let me be clear. I've never been a fan of mine mechanics either, but I strongly recommend that everyone give it a shot, because in their current state, mines have been massively improved. With automation plus detonate mines, GGG has made mine-based spellcasting feel nearly indistinguishable from a normal spellcast. As I'll demonstrate in this video, it literally feels like you're throwing spells the moment the mines hit the ground. Mines remove casting delays. We just throw them and they detonate instantly. They multiply our damage massively thanks to inherent mine multipliers. Positioning control, we can throw mines inside rooms and behind corners for extra safety. No aiming required. Mines automatically cast the spell at nearby enemies, ensuring perfect targeting without worrying about mob's position. This makes Soulrend of Reaping feel smoother, faster, and more powerful than a traditional cast. If you've never enjoyed mines before, I highly encourage you to give them another try. They might surprise you. Alright, that's enough about the main mechanics. Let's get into the core of the build. Alright, time to talk about the passive tree, and of course we start with our ascendancy, Wildspeaker. The first point we take is Scourge of the Wild, and this one is super straightforward. Minions deal more damage the more dexterity we have, and we deal more damage if our minions do more damage. In simple terms, we want to stack dexterity and minion damage because both directly scale our own damage output. Then we move into the Flash of Teeth plus Fearful Symmetry combo. With this, we secure the maximum amount of power and frenzy charges every 6 seconds. That means we're basically running with permanent charges, no need to think about generating them. And since power charges increase our critical strike chance, while frenzy charges boost our damage and speed, we get a constant DPS boost with 0 effort. Finally, we pick up Primal Instinct, which is really important for defense. This node caps our spell suppression chance, meaning we take less spell damage overall. Now, for the rest of the passive tree, our priorities are pretty clear: evasion and energy shield. Since we're evasion-based, we grab evasion scaling to avoid attacks, while also investing into energy shield for sustain. Mine-related nodes, we want to improve mine speed and damage, making sure our Soulrend mines detonate fast and hit hard. Chaos damage scaling, we take anything that boosts chaos damage and critical strike multipliers, since Soulrend of Reaping is a pure hit chaos spell with high crit potential. Mana reservation efficiency, super important. Mines don't just cost mana to throw, they also reserve a portion of your mana. If we don't pick up reservation efficiency, we'll find ourselves running out of available mana way too quickly, which would feel terrible. About jewels, we focus on minion damage. Since we scale our own damage through minion scaling, we want to grab minion damage wherever we can. Critical strike multiplier. We're scaling this build with crits, so extra crit multi is a huge DPS boost. Mine throwing speed. This one is non-negotiable. The entire comfort level of this build comes from having fast mine throwing speed and detonation speed. You need to get mine throwing speed on as many sources as possible. If you don't have enough mine throwing speed, the playstyle starts feeling clunky, and you'll notice delays in getting damage out. Now let's talk about jewels and cluster jewels. We're using 2 large clusters and 2 medium clusters, but for small clusters, I'm still experimenting with different options to see what gives the best advantage. I haven't fully settled on the best setup yet, so I'll keep you updated on that. And finally, as you can see, we are running a Chaos Inoculation CI setup, which means we're immune to chaos damage. This lets us completely ignore poison, chaos doties, and some of the deadliest mechanics in the game, making us a lot safer. Also, I'll attach additional details in the first comment of this video, so if you need a full passive tree, POE link, or extra notes, check there. Oh, and before I forget, let's quickly talk about Pantheon choices. For the Major God, honestly, just pick whatever fits your playstyle best. There's no strict requirement here, so go with something that feels good for you in terms of defense or mobility. However, for the Minor God, I strongly recommend Aberrath, and make sure to upgrade it to level 2. Being immune to Burning Ground is absolutely essential for this build. Since we entirely rely on Energy Shield, standing on Burning Ground would constantly drain us, and we'd have no way to recover effectively. Without this immunity, you're putting yourself at serious risk. So yeah, make sure you have Aberrath upgraded, and you'll never have to worry about Burning Ground ruining your run. Alright, that's enough for the passive tree section. Let's move on to gear. Alright, time to talk about gear, and we'll start with weapons. For this build, we run wands in both hands, and we're looking for specific stats that boost our overall damage output. The key stats we want are critical strike chance for spells. Since we scale our damage with crits, this is a priority. Spell damage directly increases our Soulrend of Reaping hit damage. Minion damage, this works because of our ascendancy, and scaling minion damage boosts our personal DPS. +1 to level of all chaos spell gems, or +1 to level of all spell skill gems. If you really want to maximize damage, the best case scenario is having both of these stats on the same wand. Also, don't forget to benchcraft mine throwing speed on them. This is super important because, as I mentioned before, the entire comfort level of this build comes from how fast we throw and detonate mines. If you skip this stat, the build will feel clunky instead of smooth. I'll attach a POE trade link for the best options in the first comment, so check there if you need help finding a good deal. Now let's move to the 3 unique items that form the core of this build. Replica Dragonfang's Flight. This is a massive damage boost because it gives +3 levels to Soulrend, making it hit much harder. Profane Proxy. This is a crucial piece because we allocate Despair on it, meaning our skitterbots automatically apply Despair to enemies. That means we don't need to self-cast our curse, keeping the gameplay smooth while getting a huge chaos damage boost from cursed enemies. Darkness Enthroned. This belt is insane because Abyss Jewels give some of the best stat combinations in the game. For the 2 Abyss Jewels, I bought them for 20 to 25 chaos each. Not sure if the price is still the same, but just look for ones with flat chaos damage and critical strike multiplier at minimum. These are the 2 best damage stats we can get here. Now let's cover the important things to look for on rare items. Ring. This ring needs to have a high amount of elemental resistances, energy shield, dexterity, and evasion. If possible, we want all 3 because dexterity scales our damage directly. Energy shield gives us more sustain. Evasion helps us avoid incoming hits. Crafted reduced mana cost of skills. This is actually very important. Sometimes you might have enough mana reserved for mines, but not enough to actually throw them. This mod helps a lot with that problem. Boots. For boots, you want movement speed. Always aim for at least 30% or more. Resistances and dexterity. Again, dex boosts our damage and resistances are mandatory. Energy shield if possible. Any extra ES helps. But the most important thing here is the cooldown recovery speed on the implicit. You need at least 0.19 seconds on that spell because it makes mine automation faster, allowing for smoother detonations. Gloves and helmet aside from the usual stats like evasion, dexterity, energy shield, and resistances, there's one thing you absolutely want to have. Projectiles pierce an additional target. This is the only source of pierce we have in the entire build. Without it, our Soulrend projectiles won't hit enough enemies, lowering our clear speed significantly. So whenever you can, make sure your gloves or helmet have this stat. Now, I almost forgot about flasks, but there's actually one really important one we need. Mana flask with effect is not removed when unreserved mana is filled. This is mandatory because in this build, our mines actually reserve mana, meaning if we don't have this modifier, our mana flask could stop working when we still need it. With this, we get continuous mana sustain, making the build feel a lot smoother. For the rest of our flasks, we're keeping it simple. Diamond Flask boosts our crit consistency. Quicksilver Flask, because we want to move fast while clearing. Silver Flask gives Onslaught for even more speed. Jade Flask boosts our evasion, which helps a lot with survivability. Alright, I tried to keep this section as short and to the point as possible, but if you have any questions, just ask in the comments. I'm still learning and improving this build myself so we can help each other out and optimize the setup together. Now let's move on to the final part, the gem setup. Alright, let's talk about gems, starting with the main mine setup. At the core of our build, we have Soulrend of Reaping linked with high-impact mine support. This setup makes it so that every time we throw mines, they detonate and cast Soulrend for us. To support this, we're running charged mine support, minefield support, trap and mine damage support, greater multiple projectiles. This makes Soulrend cover a much wider area, making mapping feel smooth and super satisfying. Now, ideally, I'd also love to have returning projectiles, because that would send Soulrend back across the screen, covering even more space. But the problem is, if we replace trap and mine damage for it, we lose too much damage, so I think I'll just wait until I can afford a Nimbus ring, if I ever manage to get that much currency. The other mandatory gem links revolve around detonate mines and automation. Super important. This makes sure our mines detonate instantly, keeping the gameplay fast and smooth. Quality on automation. Be sure to get this because it speeds up the detonation sequence, reducing the cooldown time of the skill. Another addition I'm running is Righteous Fire just to get the spell damage bonus, but honestly I rarely use it, and if you do want to run it, make sure to use the Val version, because we can't cast the regular version at all since our maximum life is 1. For movement, I run Frostblink, and since this build is pretty squishy, I also keep a 1-link setup for Cast on Death plus Portal, because let's be real, dying happens sometimes, so at least we make respawning faster. Despair is automatically applied through Profane Proxy, so we don't need to cast it manually. A Wither Totem setup in the helmet. This massively increases bossing damage by stacking Wither, making enemies take more chaos damage over time. Movement skill, Lightning Warp. Now onto one of my favorite parts, Lightning Warp. This is actually my second favorite movement skill in the entire game, but unfortunately it needs an entire setup to work properly. So to make sure we teleport instantly, we support it with Swift Affliction. Less duration reduces the duration of the skill, allowing instant teleport. Faster casting speeds up the entire animation time, making it feel snappy. Finally, in the boots, we're running our Aura's setup, Summon Skitterbot's Discipline, Zealotry. Now, at some point, I really hope to afford an Enlightened Support gem because that would lower our mana reservation, allowing us to throw even more mines since we'd have more unreserved mana to work with. Alright, that's it for the gem setup. As you can see, my gems are far from perfect, but keep in mind that most of them can be leveled up to 21, and in almost every case, it's worth getting them at max quality for the extra bonuses. If you have any questions about gem choices or want to optimize your own setup, feel free to ask in the comments. Like I said before, I'm still learning and refining this build, so let's help each other out and improve together. Now let's move on to the final section, Map and Boss Setup. Alright, let's quickly go over the Map and Boss setup for this build. For general mapping, it's super simple. We just throw mines in front of us or behind corners for extra safety, then blink forward to keep moving. If you're fully comfortable with the playstyle, you can warp around aggressively, making clearing super fast and smooth. Right now, I'm cruising through Tier 10 to 11 maps, and at this level I can actually afford to run returning projectiles, because mobs just get one-shot anyway. However, I know that later in higher tier maps, I'll probably need to drop it for more damage-focused support gems like trap and mine damage support, since enemies will start surviving the first wave of hits. For the main mapping setup, Greater Multiple Projectiles is a must. It just makes the clear field beautiful and super satisfying, since Soulrend spreads out and wipes entire packs effortlessly. For boss fights, we switch things up a bit. We drop GMP and instead use Void Manipulation, since bosses don't need extra projectiles, they just need to die as fast as possible. We place Wither Totems right away to stack Wither and increase chaos damage taken. Then we just start spamming mines. That's it. No need for complicated mechanics, just focus on positioning and keeping the damage flowing. I wish I had more clips to show you, but honestly, I haven't had much time to play. This is just where I've reached in the game so far. I really hope you enjoyed watching, maybe learned something new, and hopefully you have some advice for me too, because I'm always looking for ways to improve and optimize the build even further. If you liked the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. It's a free way to support the channel, and it helps me keep making more POE content like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
You